Full text of the story of the Golden Lock by Jiang Eileen P1 Section 1 to Section 6 The Golden Lock 1. The rest of the clothes will be subsidized, Xiao Shuang said. For this wedding, we have driven the revolutionary party to rebel, but you ladies have been wronged. Feng Xiu sighed. Don't mention it. Just save some money. It's better. There is a music score. You can't be too dismissive. How can we be upset because we don't speak a word? Xiao Shuang said. No wonder the third grandma is not happy. Don't tell your lady to go. Our second grandma's family runs a sesame oil shop. Feng Xiao yelled. Open a sesame oil shop. Where did you think of it? Like your eldest grandma. She is also a young lady from a noble family. Although that one is not as good as the eldest grandma. She is not a lowly person, Xiao Shuang said. There is certainly a reason for this. You have also seen our second master. He is a cripple. Who would want to be the daughter of an official family? Give it to him. The old lady had no choice but to buy an aunt for the second master. The matchmaker found this girl from the Cao family. She was born in July and is called Qiqiao, Feng Xiao said. Oh, it's the aunt, Xiao Shuang said. It turned out to be my aunt, later. The old lady thought that since she didn't plan to marry another man for the second master. Even though I am new here, I have learned a few things about it. Xiao Shuang said, dragon begets dragon, phoenix begets phoenix. This is the saying. Yes, you haven't heard her talk yet. In front of the girls, there is no taboo at all. Fortunately, our family has always been silent about what is said internally and externally, so the girls don't understand anything. Even if they don't understand, they're still ashamed. There is no place to hide. Feng Xiao chuckled and said, Really? Xiao Shuang sneered and said, She deserves it too. I was originally the old lady in front of you. The second master takes medicine all day long and can't move without people. The few girls in the house are not enough, so they pushed me over. What's wrong? Why are you cold? Feng Xiao shook her head. Xiao Shuang said, Look at how cute you are with your neck curled up. Before she could finish her sentence, Feng Xiu sneezed. Xiao Shuang hurriedly pushed her and said, Go to sleep. Go to sleep. Let's make a nest quickly. Feng Xiu knelt down and sneezed. He got down and took off his coat and said with a smile, It's not winter. How could it be freezing? Xiao Shuang said, Don't look at the window being closed. The wind is squeaking in the window hole. The two of them fell asleep separately. And Feng Xiao asked quietly, It's been 4 or 5 years since you came here, Xiao Shuang said. Who? Feng Xiao said. Who else is there? Xiao Shuang said. Oh, she. It's not been 5 years, Feng Xiu said. They also gave birth to boys and girls, but they didn't make any noise. Xiao Shuang said, You're still talking about it. There's a lot to talk about. The old lady led by the old lady, the whole family went to Puchuo Mountain to offer incense. She didn't go there for confinement, so she was left to look after the house. My uncle was walking more frequently and lost a lot of things. Feng Xiao said in surprise, I haven't found anything yet. What's the truth? Xiao Shuang said. What good can you ask? Everyone's face is not good or bad. The two of them talked over a distance of 10 feet, even though she tried her best to lower her throat. Some words still sounded louder, waking up Nanny Zhao, who was sleeping on the big bed. Aunt Zhao called, Xiao Shuang. Xiao Shuang did not dare to agree. People here squeeze their noses and eyes. What can you hide from others? Don't ask for a beating as soon as possible. There was a sudden silence in the room. Xiao Shuang and Feng Xiu still didn't dare to talk. No one spoke for a long time, and everyone fell asleep. It's almost dawn. The flat waning moon gets lower, lower, and bigger, sinking like a red gold basin. The tofu pudding seller carried his burden and shouted leisurely, and all he could hear was the long ending. Hua, vomit, hua, vomit, go in further. All he could hear was oh, vomit. Oh, vomit. The girls and women in the house also got up, opening doors, slapping water on their faces, folding bedding, hanging curtains, and combing their hair. Fang Xiao helped Lan Xian, the third mistress, get dressed. Lan Xian went to the mirror and looked carefully. She took out a water-green floral handkerchief from her armpit, wiped the powder on her nose, and turned her back to the third master on the bed. "I'll go and say hello to the old lady first," he said. "I'm sure I'll miss something while I'm waiting for you." Liu Xi said, "I said it 2 days ago. It was because there was too much noise on the road that I couldn't sleep well. I think I'm used to it now, so I'll catch up on some sleep today." The old lady was so happy yesterday that she called it sugar walnut. Just remember it. Langshan Dajian sat down around the table and helped wearing walnut clothes. Yun's hands were sore and he put down the pliers, and Lan Xian took them. Dajian said, "Be careful with your watery nails. They have been grown so long, it would be a pity if they break." Yun said, "Send someone to get gold nail covers." Lan Xian said with a smile, "It's such trouble. It's better to ask them to take it to the kitchen and peel it." He wears a silver-red shirt with white threads on his lower body. He has no green shimmering blue ruby small feet, a thin face, a scarlet mouth, and fine teeth, triangular eyes, and small mountain eyebrows. Look round, smiled and said, "Everyone is here. I must be late again today. Why don't you blame me for not being late?" Touching the black hair, "Who taught me that my window faces the backyard? Just allocate such a room to after all. We are not going to live long." The more you talk, the more embarrassing you will become. Qiqiao simply said. He stepped forward and grabbed Dajian's sleeve and said, "I can bet on a curse. In the past 5 years, I can bet on a curse. Do you dare to bet? Do you dare to bet?" Dajian couldn't help but chuckle. "Gulu," he asked, "why do you have 2 children?" Qiqiao said, "Really? Even I don't know how these children were born. The more I think about it, the less I understand." Dajian waved her hand and said, "That's enough. That's enough. Just say a few words, even if you treat third sister as your own. And there's nothing to hide behind. Just leave Sister Yen here." The vendors on the street were shaking their bowling drums in the distance, and the ignorant words Buling contained the memories of countless aging children. Chartered cars dinged by, and occasionally a car honked twice. "Why is the lady's hair so thin and thick? Last year, she still had nice black hair. It should be shed. Isn't it a lot?" Yuns turned over to protect the braid and said with a smile, "I lost 2 hairs. But you have to take care of it." Qiqiao just looked at her and shouted, "Sister-in-law, come and take a look. Sister Yun, she is indeed much thinner. Could it be that the young lady has something on her mind?" Yun slapped her hand away and said angrily, "You are really going crazy today." Dajian said, "I think I have a few private things to say." Yuns couldn't help laughing and said, "How can the old lady listen to her words?" Dajian sneered, "That's not sure. The minds of the elderly are always active." After running for 2 steps, he stopped again, hunched forward, holding his face and sobbing. Dajian rushed over to support her and persuaded her, "Sister, please stop acting like this. Stop acting like this. I don't want to argue with someone like her, who will take her words seriously." Yun shook her off and walked towards him, running inside the house. Dajian came back to the sitting room, clapped her hands and said, "This is causing trouble." It was so noisy, and there were people trying to persuade them, but they couldn't stop it. Dajian stood up and said, "I'll go take a look. Don't look at this. This young lady is very good-natured. And she is not someone to be trifled with if you push her too hard." The Golden Lock 3. And said with a smile, "Such an outstandingly talented bride. Third brother, you haven't thanked me yet. If I hadn't urged them to do it earlier, I have done this for you. And this delay. After the war is over, it may take 10 or 8 years. I won't make you anxious. It's a shame that the bride kept you, even if others knelt down and begged you. They couldn't keep you, Jizi said with a smile. Really, my sister-in-law did and you haven't kept me. So how can you not keep me? He smiled and winked at Lanxian. Qiqiao laughed so hard that she couldn't stand up and said, "Third sister? You don't care about him, such a monkey kid. I watched him grow up. And he took advantage of me." Qiqiao let out a cry and said, "Hurry up and trim it with scissors. Repair. I remember there is a pair of small scissors in this room." Then he called, "Xiao Shuang, Liuxi, who's here?" Lan Xianli stood up and said, "Second sister-in-law, don't bother. I'll go up to my room and cut it off." Then he got out. Qiqiao sat down on Langshan's chair, held her chin in one hand, raised her eyebrows, and looked at Jizi sideways. "Is she angry with me?" Jizi said with a smile. "Why is she angry with you?" "Angry," Qiqiao said. "I was about to ask, did I say something wrong? Isn't it good to leave you at home? You just made a loss, pledge after selling the house and the land. If I frown, I'm no longer your second sister-in-law, who said we are close relatives. I just want you to take care of your body." Jizi sneered and said, "I am careful. Do you want you to worry about my body?" Qiqiao said in a trembling voice, "A person's body is the first priority. Look at how your second brother behaved like that. Is he still a human being? Can you still treat him as a human being?" "Jizi," he said sternly, "second brother can't compare to me. He's like that all the time. It's not his fault. He's a poor man. Everything depends on his second sister-in-law to take care of him. Sit next to your second brother." She tried to sit down next to Jizi, holding only a corner of his chair. She put her hand on his leg and said, "Have you ever touched his flesh? It's soft. It's heavy, just like a person's feet sometimes feel numb. And it feels like." Jizi's face also changed color, but he still laughed frivolously, leaned down. It wasn't like she was crying. It was like she was vomiting. Jizi was stunned at first, then stood up and said, "I'll just leave. You are not afraid of people, but I am afraid of people. I have to save some face for my second brother." Qiqiao stood up holding the chair and sobbed, "I'm leaving." She pulled the handkerchief in her sleeves and looked at her face. She suddenly smiled and said, "You're protecting your second brother like this?" I rubbed my eyes. "Don't go into the sand. Don't say I'm your sister-in-law. Even if I'm your wet nurse, I'm afraid you won't care." Jizi smiled and said, "I am a casual person. How can I withstand your judgment?" Qiqiao waited. When he was about to go out, he put his vest under the door again and whispered, "I don't understand. How am I inferior to others? What's wrong with me?" Jizi smiled and said, "My dear sister-in-law, what's wrong with you?" Jizi looked at her and his heart moved. But that doesn't work. He can play as much as he wants. He has already made up his mind not to offend his family after the momentary interest has passed. He can't hide or kick away. Qiqiao's consciousness was still unclear. She didn't wake up until someone pushed the door. She had to resort to a trick and hide behind the door when she saw Dazan walking in. She stepped out with her heels and hit Dazan on the back. Dazan forced a smile and said, "Your mood is getting better and better." Then he looked at the table and said, "Ha, those walnuts are almost eaten. There is no one else. It must be the third brother." She gritted her teeth and said, "Isn't it the same when it comes to money? They just tell us to save money and let people spend a lot of money on it. I won't take this tone." Dazan glanced at her and said coldly, "There's nothing we can do about it." Qiqiao scolded, "My uncle is here. It's not about betraying people. What's wrong with the boil in your throat? Mosquitoes. It's like humming." Xiao Shuang took a step back, not daring to speak. Jane smiled and said, "Stop being so wicked. Just go down. It's rare for her family to come to the house, and the service is not attentive. It's time to make a big fuss again." The old lady didn't keep asking. After hearing this, Qiqiao became angry. He stamped his feet and murmured, "Just pretend you don't know, please. The emperor even has a straw sandal kiss." "His," he said as he went down. Qiqiao said in a trembling voice. Yes. Don't blame him for not having anything to say. He doesn't have the nerve to come see me. Then she said to her brother, I just want you to never come to my door again in this life. You have done me a favor. If you throw me away, I won't be able to leave. You don't care about my life or death. Cao Qiqiao said. What are you talking about? It's okay for others to say so, but you also say so. If you don't cover up for me, your own face will not be bright. Qiqiao said. If I don't say it, I can't help others not saying it. Just because of you, I'm so angry that I'm sick here. Today, you still use this to block me. Her sister-in-law said hurriedly. It's his fault, isn't it? It's his fault. The girl has been wronged. This is not the only grievance that the girl has suffered. Her sister-in-law was so frightened that she covered her face. She said, Goodbye, aunt. The patient heard this and felt bad. Qiqiao said, He feels bad. Do I feel better? Her sister-in-law said, My aunt still has rickets. I can't bear such excitement. Get out of here. Cao Qiqiao said, Sister, please listen to me. Don't tell me that you feel uncomfortable now. It's better to have an Attell family walking around. It's just that you have a future. The Jiang family is a big family, and the elders always use big hats to oppress people. The juniors are all like wolves and tigers. Which one is easy to mess with? I need a helper to plan for you. There will be many times when you will need your brother and your nephew in the future. Qiqiao said, I relied on you for help, but I'm in trouble. I've seen you through and through. If you can beat them, you come to me to claim credit and ask for money. If you can't beat them, just fall over their ... Originally, when I saw an official, I lost all my soul. I shrank my head and decided to follow my fate. Let's go. Let's go now, in good conscience. I should just use your coins. If I was greedy for gifts and asked the Jiang family for a few hundred more taels of silver to sell you to them as my concubine, I would have sold you, Qiqiao said. Isn't grandma better than my aunt? If you take a long-term view, you will have great hope. When New Year's Eve was about to reply, his wife stopped him and said, Just say less. There will be a day to meet again in the future. When my aunt thinks of you in the future, she will realize that this is her only biological brother. Danian urged his wife to pack the basket box. Pick it up and leave. Danian greeted everyone in the Jiang family and wanted to see the old lady again. Qiqiao said, It's okay if you don't see her. I was just vomiting with her. Danian and his wife were both surprised. Qiqiao said, Why not? What about being naughty? The whole family is stepping on me. If I were easy to bully, I would have been trampled to death long ago. Even if I am like this, I will be so angry that I get all sorts of illnesses. If we were in Beijing, when we were about to go on the road, we divided a few boxes of things that we couldn't bring with us and gave them to the old lady. It was a waste of money for them. Her brother and sister-in-law said this in a sarcastic tone. For acquaintances, it's 1 pound or 4 taels. Sometimes she goes shopping for groceries. She wears a blue summer cloth shirt and trousers, with a mirror covered with black damask. Through the dense rows of coppers hanging pork, she saw Chao Lu in the butcher shop. She frowned. Her husband sleeping on the bed, that lifeless body, the golden lock 5. The wind came in through the window, and the long palindromic lacquered mirror hanging opposite was blown swaying, knocking against the wall. Qiqiao held the mirror with both hands. The green bamboo curtain and a pair of golden and green landscape screens. This will be different from now on. Qiqiao was wearing a white fragrant cloud gauze shirt and a black skirt, but her face seemed to be rouged, from the red eye circles to the burning cheekbones. She raised her hand and touched her face. Her face was hot, but her body was trembling with cold. She asked Xiangyun to pour a cup of tea. Xiao Shuang had already married, and Xiangyun also had a servant. After drinking the tea, it flowed heavily into her chest, and her heart was beating in the hot tea. She sat down with her back to the mirror and asked Xiangyun, Now that Master Ninth has been here this afternoon, He has been checking accounts with Master Ma in the main room. Xiang Yun responded with a yes. Qiqiao asked again, "Aren't you here, sir?" Xiang Yun said yes again. Qiqiao said, "Whose house have we been to?" Xiang Yun said, "I just went to my brother's study for a tour." Qiqiao said, "Fortunately, our brother buys books, are not afraid of him checking." It happened that a girl from the big room came out to visit and met Xiang Yun. Qiqiao finally came downstairs. A large mirror-covered ebony dining table was temporarily ranged in the main room, and the ninth old man sat alone. Qiqiao said, "Brothers, let's settle the accounts clearly. My eldest brother and sister-in-law are silent. I can't help but grow old. I can't compare to my eldest brother or sister-in-law. If the one we died had the ability to serve as an official for 2 terms, it would be easier for me to do more work, and I would be happy to be more generous. Even if I could write off all the old debts. What a pity for us. I have been sick and groaning all my life, but I have never earned a penny. I left us orphans and widows and lived on these dead money. I am a crab without legs. Chang Bai is not yet 14 years old. I will have a hard life in the future. It's over," he said. Shedding tears, old Master Ju said, "What do you do? Who's here?" "Xiang Yun, please give me Bai, brother. Find me." "Chang Bai, your father is in such a miserable state. He has been sick all over his body since he was born. And he has never lived a comfortable life for a long time. Orphans and widows. It doesn't matter to me. Can I live for decades? At most, I can't live until the old lady's soul. I made it clear before and risked my life with others. Chang Bai, you are still young. Even if you drink the northwest wind, you still have to survive." The ninth old man was so angry that he slapped the table and said, "I don't care. Yes. You asked me to come here because you begged your father to worship me. Do you think I like asking for trouble?" He stood up and kicked the chair over. Without waiting for anyone to help him, he disappeared without a trace in a gust of wind. Everyone looked at each other in silence. He slipped away without making a sound. Only Mr. Ma, who was busy sorting out the account books, fell behind and saw that all the people in the room were gone. The second mistress was left alone, beating her chest and crying. She left as if nothing had happened. She seemed embarrassed, so she had to step forward. Bodan shouted, "Second madam, second madam, second madam." Qiqiao just covered her face with her sleeves, but Master Ma couldn't take her hand away, so he took off his melon skin hat in a hurry to stir up sweat. He sat down and said with a smile, "Third brother, you have gained weight recently." Jizi smiled and said, "I look like someone who has nothing on his mind," Qiqiao said with a smile. He smiled and said, "Blessed man, aren't you busy? You have always been carefree." Jizi said with a smile, "When I sell the house, I will still be carefree." Qiqiao said, "That's it. Do you want to sell the house that you made a deposit on?" Jizi said, "When I first built it, I put a lot of thought into it. There are many devices that I love, so of course I don't want to get rid of them later. You know, that piece of the land has become valuable. I renovated it into lane houses 2 years ago." She always felt a bit dangerous when it came to money transactions, so she changed her mind and said, "How is third sister? Have you had any kidney disease recently?" Jizi said with a smile, "I haven't had any disease in a long time either. I have seen her face." Qiqiao said, "What are these words? Did you quarrel?" Jizi smiled and said, "We have never quarreled before. We have to say a few words together. That's okay. It's rare that we don't have such leisurely time to quarrel." Qiqiao said, "Why is this so? I don't believe it." Jizi propped his elbows on the armrests of the wicker chair, crossed his fingers, and built an awning with his hands, and his shadow fell on his eyes. He sighed deeply. Qiqiao smiled and said, "Nothing else. Or you were playing too hard outside. You did something wrong. And you still groaned as if someone had harmed you. There is no good person in your Jiang family." Raised the white fan, pretending to fight. Jizi moved his crossed fingers downward, put his thumbs on his lips, and slowly stroked the bridge of his nose with his 2 index fingers. revealing a pair of watery eyes. Those eyes were the black pebbles at the bottom of the narcissus vat, with water on them and a cold, expressionless bottom. I couldn't tell what he was thinking. Qiqiao said, "I have to hit you." Jizi's eyes suddenly burst into laughter and said, "Hit you, hit you." Qiqiao was about to hit you, but he took his hand back and started to use his breath again. "I really hit you." He raised his hand, chopped down a fan, and stopped in midair. He chuckled. Jizi shrugged his shoulders with a smile, and came closer and said, "You really hit me. Just do it. It makes all my bones itchy and uncomfortable." Qiqiao hid her fan behind her back and giggled even more. The golden lock opening parenthesis 6 closing parenthesis. Gz changed the direction of the chair and sat facing the wall. He leaned back on the chair, covered his eyes with his hands, and sighed again. "Why do I play so hard outside and ruin all my property? Do you know who this is all for?" Qiqiao felt a little timid without realizing it, so she walked far away and leaned on the stove on. His face slowly changed. Jizi followed. Qiqiao lowered her head, leaning on the stove with her elbows, holding a round fan in her hand. The apricot yellow tassels on the fan dragged down her forehead. Jizi stopped opposite her and whispered, "Second sister-in-law, Qiqiao." Qiqiao turned away and said with a faint smile, "It would be weird for me to believe you." Jizi also walked away and said, "That's right. How can you believe me, since you came to my house? I haven't stayed at home even for a moment." Jizi said, "It doesn't matter if you believe it. It doesn't matter if you don't believe it. So what if you believe it? After all, half of our lives have passed, and it's all in vain." But no, this half of my life is over. The flower-like age has passed. Life is so complicated and unreasonable. Why did she marry into the Jiang family in the first place? For money. He missed her money. How much money did she get from selling her life? Just this thought made her furious, even if she wrongly blamed him. Is the hardship he endured for her worth the hardship she endured for him? She finally gave up and he flirted with her again. She hated him. He was still looking at her. His eyes. Even though 10 years have passed, he is still the same person. Even if he lied to her, wouldn't it be good to find out later? Even if he knows it's a lie, he's so good at acting. So it's almost like the real thing, right? No. She couldn't have any leverage falling into this guy's hands. "Come and bring a banana fan into fan, Mr. San." Qiqiao came back into the house and deliberately frowned and said, "It's so damnable." The old woman was peeking at the door when she saw me. She wiped her head and ran away. Qiqiao scolded, "You want me to sell my land to buy your house? You want me to sell my land? Once the money is in your hands, what else can you say? You coax me. You use such words to coax me. You think I'm a fool." Jizi is gone. The old girl also scolded Qiqiao and ran away. The sour plum juice dripped down the table drop by drop, like a late leak in the night. One drop, one drop. The first watch. The second watch, 1 year, 100 years. It's such a long, silent moment. Qiqiao stood holding her head and turned around suddenly to go upstairs, holding up her skirt, hurriedly, stumbling, and kept bumping into the dark green wall. Her green coat was stained with large pieces of light color, of ash. She wanted to see him one more time from the upstairs window. She had loved him before, no matter what. Her love gave her the most pain. This alone makes her worth remembering. How many times, in order to restrain herself, she burst out so hard that all the muscles and bones in her body and the roots of her teeth ached. Today was entirely her fault. He was not a good person, and it was not like she didn't know it. If she wants him, she has to pretend to be stupid and tolerate his badness. Why did she expose him? Isn't that what life is all about? After all, what is true? What is fake? She went to the window and opened the dark green foreign-style curtains decorated with small pom-poms. Jizi was looking out in the alley, with his long gown hanging on his arms. When the wind went away, it sucked the curtain back again. Before the air could pass through, The wind came again and it was gone. The head was wrapped around her. It was cold and hot. And she just shed tears.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.